Go.
Welcome everybody, Super Wednesdays here in the Holy Apple, Holy Land of Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, 22nd day of the 1st of Adar, 5779. I have to say again that God is very good. He's given us this present here, this is part 3 here, probably the finale on the subject, and I've looked far and wide, left, right, up, down, all angles, and to have this present that was sent by God, to be able to get these classes off and finally up is a free present for us, and whoever's watching, whoever's listening. We have the whole story here. Perhaps for the first time, all the information that you need to understand exactly what happened. So, with Hashem's help, we're going to go for the finale today. Take it away. Put on a few seatbelts here. An amazing concept. It will help us understand many question marks we might have had. The Maimonides says in 2 places. He writes this in his, in the beginning of his commentary on the Mishnah. He also writes it in his Jewish law work, the foundations of the Torah. So he writes this concept in 2 places. A prophet comes, he says, "Hi guys, how's everything doing? How you guys doing? I'm a real prophet." Well, who are you? You look him up in the phone book. You look him up, references. Do you have any documentation here? Yeah, you gotta believe that I'm a real prophet. So Maimonides tells us, and from the Talmud, that basically, in order to see if he's the real McCoy, if he's the real deal, you have to. There's 2 possibilities. One is that he could possibly tell you what's going to happen in the future. If it's a bad thing that's rolling down the future, it says that's not a proof. If it did not come true, let's say this prophet, Jay the prophet, he comes by and says, "You know what? There's going to be a tremendous earthquake in another 3 months. I'll give you the date, I'll give you the time." 3 months goes by, to that date, to the time, to the hour, no earthquake, no Richter scale, no pun, or maybe a pun intended over there, Richter scale, no earthquake over there. So Maimonides tells us this is not a proof that the guy's not for real. Why? Because it could be that the Jewish people repented, and therefore the decree was annulled. So that's not a proof. What's the second way? Second possibility is a prophet J comes, "I'm for real," and then he tells us that in 3 months, 5 months, or whatever, there's going to be a tremendous stock, and if you buy into this stock, it's going to go up, 5,000%. And on this date, it's going to go up 5,000%. It's a good idea to get those stocks. So you see, you put some money in the stock market, and if that comes true, if that happens on that date, then that is a sign that the person is a true prophet. So if he comes up with a bad forecast, that's not a proof that he's fake. Could be that we repented. If he comes up with a good forecast and it doesn't happen, then he's not for real. He's not for real. Okay, now this brings us to a difficulty. A good prophecy has to come true. That's the bottom line. So how do we explain Jacob? Jacob gets a promise. In the portion of Vayetze, Jacob is promised by God that he will protect and guard and make sure that he will come back to the land of Israel. He's on the run from his brother Esau. On the run again, no extra charge. Was that on the road again or on the run again? Yeah. Anyways, so all of a sudden, he meets up after 36 years. He meets up with his brother Esau, and he's frightened. Frightened. But one second, time out. Remember, a good prophecy has to come true. Jacob says, no, you didn't understand. If a person is okay, if a person keeps up his righteousness, then the prophecy has to come true. But maybe I messed up, Jacob says. Maybe I messed up. In fact, commentators say that perhaps the mess up was his fear. The fear itself was the fall. That's another class. So, how could Jacob be afraid? He was promised by God. It's a good prophecy. I will protect you. And Jacob was afraid. He says, oh. So, back to Maimonides in two places. Maimonides explains, there's two different laws. If God promises to a private prophet or a private citizen a good, positive prophecy, that could change if we mess up. If we start transgressing and messing up, doing stupid things, even though God promised us on a private level, He gave us a tremendous blessing or something that would come true, it does not have to come true. However, if God promises to the Jewish population through a prophet something good, it has to come true. That's the difference. If it's a private citizen, that could change if we mess up. If it's a prophecy to the entire Jewish nation, those prophecies have to come true. That's what Maimonides tells us. Now put on the seatbelt. We have two tremendous lessons here. They're pretty much saying the same thing. One of them is much, much more ancient. It's the book called the Tzalach, Tziyun Lenefesh Chaya. And more in our times, the rabbi of the old city of Jerusalem, Rabbi Nevinsal. They both have the same, even though, of course, Rabbi Nevinsal does not mention the Tzalach, they pretty much say the same thing. An amazing lesson. So here's the problem, folks. God comes up to Abraham and he gives him a positive prophecy. He tells him, you know what, I have some good news for you. I got some bad news and some good news. The bad news is that the Jewish people are going to go down, going to be in exile. The good news is that they will be redeemed after 400 years. Well, that's a good prophecy. 400 years, time is up. The time is up. Another prophecy. It says in the Talmud, in Tractate Brachot, page 4, we read this prayer every day in the morning, but we don't realize what we're saying. We say, Ad Yavor Amcha Hashem, Ad Yavor Amzu Kanita. We say twice that when we are coming over and entering the land of Israel, then this happens. Why are we stuttering and saying twice when we come over to Israel? So the Talmud tells us an amazing thing. That what happened to Joshua and the Jewish people when they entered the land of Israel after spending 40 years in the desert, all those great miracles, imagine, coming into the land of Israel and the tremendous miracles, Jericho, when the walls come tumbling down, and tremendous miracles that happened to the Jewish people. The Jordan River splits. Jordan River splits. Tremendous miracles that happened to Joshua. The same situation should have happened when Ezra came in to rebuild the second temple and to bring the Jewish people back from the first exile. But what happened? The Jewish people, in the time of the second temple, when it came time to return to the land of Israel, when it came time to return and build the second temple, we screwed up. We sinned. What is the sin? It's not for right now. Some say that we didn't come back in full force, in full numbers to the land of Israel. only 42,000 Jews came back. That was the sin. But folks, what's going on over here? 2 cases, 400 years, we will be out. A great prophecy. 400 years, it's all over. When we come in the time of the Second Temple with Ezra, we're going to see those miracles. A tremendous prophecy, a good prophecy, a positive one. What happened here? What happened to the law of Maimonides? What happened to the law of the Torah? He brings it down. It's not his intuition, Maimonides. He brings it down from the Talmud, from the Torah. And here we have an unbelievable idea. From both Rabbi Nebenzahl and from the Tzalach. By the way, I'm going to try as much as possible not to say the pages because each page takes up a lot of time. Anybody has a question, you could write to me, put it on the comments here. I will put it on the comments on the bottom of the YouTube comment section, and without promising, I will do my best to get you the sources. You will get them. So I'm just going to try to use and most of them I'm going to use the name. So they both asked this question, and it's an amazing answer. This will open up our eyes and give us tremendous insight and understanding to what happened here. Say the following: that when God gives a good prophecy, Maimonides was right. The Talmud is right. It has to come true. The only question is that when will it come true? If we mess up, a good prophecy can be delayed. It cannot be annulled. It has to happen, but not necessarily according to the timetable that it should have happened. So, our 2 commentators here tell us an amazing thing. When we look at the exile, the Egyptian exile, you know how many opportunities, windows of opportunities there were for the Jewish people to be redeemed? A week ago or 2 weeks ago, we spoke about 6 possibilities of how to count the 400 years. All of them are correct. All of them are correct. All of them are windows of opportunity to bring the redemption. That means when in our discussion here about the tribe of Ephraim, when they looked out and they saw 400 years were up, were they hallucinating? Were they lying? No! That was a tremendous opportunity to bring this redemption, to bring the redemption of the Jewish people from Egypt. Our commentators give us a proof. We know that our sages tell us that there was no slave that ever escaped Egypt. That's very interesting. How in the world did an entire tribe, the tribe of Ephraim, how did they slip out the back, Jack? And they were thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people. How did they do that one? The answer is very simple. Because once the 400 years was over, according to the time that God spoke with Abraham during the covenant, Brit Ben Abitarim, when those 400 years were over, that was a window of opportunity to bring the final redemption. Therefore, the gates of Egypt, after this period of time, 400, they were open. So when we talk about no slave escaping from Egypt, we're talking about before this first opportunity of bringing the final redemption. That's when, up until that point, no slave. But when the redemption time came, when it was a possibility to bring the redemption, then the gates, of course, now were open. So this is an amazing thing also, that God promised that in the time that we return to the land of Babylonia, when we return from the exile, we will have all these miracles. And it didn't happen in the time of Ezra, during the Second Temple. No sweat. Because the problem is, because of our sins, of our transgressions, even a positive prophecy can be delayed. It will happen. It will happen in our times. It will happen. But a good prophecy, even to a nation, can be delayed. So therefore, just to get our bearings, it's an amazing thing. When we're right around the corner from the story of Purim, we know that there were 70 years, but everyone messed up. Or did they? Nobody really messed up. When the king of Babylonia, Belshazzar, the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar, when he did his calculations, he said, you know what? The 70 years finished when my grandfather began his reign, the first year of my grandfather Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylonia, his reign. And then Achashverosh comes and says, no, you're wrong. You know when the 70 years, the 70 years start from the 70 years start from the 8th year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, or when the exile, when a certain portion of the Jewish people were exiled, the first wave of refugees, that was during the time of the king Yechoniah. That's when the 70 years start. And then Daniel comes by, and Daniel says, no, you guys are all wrong. It starts during the 2nd year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, not the 1st and not the 8th. And they were all wrong. Or were they? No. All of these were windows of opportunity to bring the redemption. They all could have been utilized by the Jewish people, and the 70 years could have been counted from that stage. In the end, because of our sins, the count only began after the destruction of the temple by Nebuchadnezzar. It only started over there. But that was only because of our transgressions. So it's an amazing thing. And when Daniel, in the end of his book, in the last 2 verses of Daniel, my brother, Daniel says the exile will end after 1,335 years. It's true. Question is, okay, there were so many opportunities that we could have counted the 1,335 years from various events. If we're still in exile today, right now, on these Super Wednesdays, then we lost a window of opportunity. In fact, there's a book, an amazing book. I've heard about it, never seen it, but there's a book that gives all the possible dates that our sages, the great rabbis of all generations, gave certain dates that the Messiah would come, and they didn't come, and instead, the terrible things that transpired instead. Because when we don't take advantage of that window of opportunity, that window gets closed and bad things happen. But it was all a possibility. The rabbis were not wrong. They're all possibilities. They just were delayed. So that's an amazing thing. So therefore, back to Ephraim, the tribe of Ephraim. We cannot say that the problem with Ephraim was that he miscalculated. In the end, he did miscalculate. But there were so many signs that were pointing that they were correct. And let it be known, there was no tribe like the tribe of Ephraim that were more skilled and were more blessed with understanding the stars and the above constellations and the sun. They were the highest level, right? Their flag was the sun and the moon. They understood. They were the family of Joseph. They understood more than anybody else the calculations of redemption, how it works. So they had a lot going when they chose that date. Believe us, there was a lot of proofs that they were correct. So are we going to say that they were destroyed, wiped out in so massive numbers because of the fact that they were correct, but because of sins, the window of opportunity was closed, and that's why they were wiped out, because they wanted to be redeemed, because they wanted to leave exile to Egypt. They were wiped out. Can't say that. Okay. So we're left with one big barrier in our way, and that is we have a source, two sources, that say an amazing line. This is really amazing. It says that our first source is in the Mechilta, the words of our sages, the beginning of Bishalach, portion of Bishalach. Our second one is Shir HaShirim Rabbah 2:7. There, in these two sources, it says an amazing line. It says, you know what the mistake, you know what the sin of Ephraim was? The sin was that they, number one, they miscalculated. They miscalculated, and they left Egypt too early. That was their first sin. They hastened the redemption. It wasn't here yet. And the second sin was that they transgressed one of the oaths. Ooh. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Where's Rod Serling when you need him? On the Twilight Zone. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Oh. What? They transgressed one of the oaths. What oaths are we talking about? Oh, according to the Magen Avraham, according to the Marzu, two commentators, they tell us that when you open up the tractate of Ketubot, page 111, side A, there are 3 oaths, later on 6 oaths, and in the Midrash, there's an opinion that there were 4. So we have 3 opinions, how many oaths there were. 3, 4, or 6. What? We're talking about the Talmud from Babylonia. How are you bringing the 3, 4, 6 oaths into the tribe of Ephraim? We're talking about hundreds of 1,000 years before. Yeah, they're in Egypt, and then we go 40 years in the desert, and then we build up the temple, and the temple eventually, we were there for 850 years. We're talking about over 1,000 years here. Where's this? Where did that come from? It's like, whoa, it's like this knockout punch. You're not ready for it. It comes from nowhere. One of those sucker punches, I think they're called. Yeah, you don't know where they're coming from. But that's what they say. That these oaths, amazing. These oaths that we will see what they are in a minute. These oaths were already known 1,000+ years before. Even though it appears in the Talmud, it looks like this is a new discussion. It looks like we're talking about only the period of the Babylonian exile. Do not return to the land of Israel before the 70-year period. We might think that it's talking about only this period of history and then it's all over. No. There are opinion that these oaths go back to the time of Ephraim, the tribe of Ephraim, and continue till this very day. That's the reason why our class is this a repeat? Is the tribe of Ephraim a repeat? Or is the state of Israel, there we go, state of Israel a repeat of the sin of the tribe of Ephraim? Okay, so what, okay, oh, 1 second here. Before we go there, before we go to this place, we have to understand that what the concept that the Tzalach and Rav Nebenzahl and Maimonides tells us, we'll see an amazing thing. See an amazing thing. It says in the Ramban, Nachmanides writes that the tribe of Ephraim were correct. In their calculations, it was really 400 years from the time that God spoke to Abraham until the time that Ephraim left. Those 400 years, that was supposed to be the end of the exile. What happened? What happened? They were wiped out. So Nachmanides says, an amazing idea. He says what happened was that was the time of redemption. It was a true calculation. So why were they wiped out? Because of the fact that a good prophecy can be delayed. And it was delayed. And why was it delayed? It could be delayed only because of our transgressions, our mess-ups, screw-ups. So what was the mess-up? So Nachmanides said what the tribe of Ephraim didn't realize was the fact that the Jewish people in the land of Egypt really messed up, really transgressed. In fact, even a simple issue. Today, you look at the Jewish people in the land of Israel, 94% of the Jews in the land of Israel perform the commandment of circumcision. That's an amazing, because we don't have 94% religious people in the land of Israel. So it's an amazing thing. So think about what the spiritual level of the Jews of Egypt, they had nullified the commandment of circumcision since the time that Joseph passed away. We're talking about, it was 116 years. The only tribe that continued performing circumcision was the tribe of the Levites. They were the only one. 116 years, baby. Amazing thing. So therefore, because of the fact that they desecrated the Sabbath and they were sinners, these are the words of Nachmanides. Because of the fact, the tribe of Ephraim, they were correct, but because of the fact that they didn't catch that the Jewish people were not ready spiritually to be redeemed, so they made that mistake. Because they should have realized that the situation of the Jewish people is a no-go. And therefore, that's why, okay, that was their mistake. Their mistake was they should have looked at the situation of the Jewish people and realized that, we haven't received the special codes yet. We haven't seen the two redeemers that we spoke about last week. We're missing the bones of Joseph here. Something's not right. It must be that the Jewish people have transgressed and we're not ready. It's a window of opportunity. It could have been, but we're not ready. And even so, they left. That was the mistake. That's why they fell. The Shlah HaKadosh, the Holy Shlah, and the Tosfot, based on the Tractate of Shabbat, page 10, side B, an amazing idea. The Talmud tells us, hold on to your socks over here, an amazing idea. The Talmud tells us that the reason why the Jewish people went into slavery into Egypt was due to the fact that the brothers sold Joseph. Say what? Like, boom, boom, wake up. I don't understand. Remember, remember Abraham? Remember that Abraham dude? Remember him 400 years ago? Remember 400 years ago? Abraham was told that we're going to be enslaved? What are you talking about? Something that happened way after Abraham, way after the time of Isaac. What are you talking about? That's what the Talmud says. What's going on over here? So an amazing Shlah, the commentator, the Shlah, the Holy Shlah, and the Tosfot, and others. You see an amazing idea here. You know why? Think about it. How come no other tribe messed up? No other tribe left early. Only these Ephraim people. Why is that? And it's an amazing, amazing explanation. The Shlah and the Tosfot say, based on this Talmud in Shabbat, it's an amazing idea. The fact was that the Jewish people were really supposed to do only 400 years. But in the end, we know there's another verse in the Torah, in the portion of Bo, that says they did 430 years. What's that all about? So the Shlah turns the whole tables around here. Unbelievable. He lets out all of his ammunition and he says, you know what happened? Because the Talmud means that not that we went down to Egypt because of Joseph. It happened way before that, in the time of Abraham, during this covenant, Brit Ben Abtarim, for sure. It was decided before that. However, the delay in the redemption, the 30-year delay, was because of the fact that the brothers sold their own brother Joseph down the tubes. Now, here's the clincher. Ephraim, who is the son of Joseph, says, time out. That is a reason to punish the Jewish people. All the tribes were involved in the selling of Joseph, but me, remember me? I'm the son of Joseph. I'm clean. I did not participate. We did not participate in the selling of our own father. So we are exempt from this 30-year taxation and addition of the time. So we are taking off because we were not responsible for the selling. They just made one mistake. They just made one mistake. As we say in English, it takes two to tango. And we know that it is true that the brothers did a terrible thing. They sold their own brother, Joseph, into slavery. However, we know that Joseph was not clean. It takes two to tango. And our sages tell us that there were things that Joseph did improperly that caused the rage of the brothers against him. He had made some mistakes. And therefore, because of the fact that Joseph is also responsible for this additional time, this additional 30 years, because in a sense, he created the hatred towards him. He brought, there's some people, remember there was a certain person in your class that he would do it like, he would do everything to bring himself fire. He would make all the wrong moves. That guy in the class sits in the corner and he would do everything in his power to make you upset. He made all the mistakes. So here, this was number one. They did not understand that they were part of the problem. Joseph was part of the problem. So therefore, you also have to pay the price. Tribe of Ephraim, you can't go anywhere now. You have to pay the extra 30 years. Not only that, we know that all Jews are responsible for one another. So why are you leaving? You're the only guys. Look behind you. Hey, where is everybody? Where did they disappear to? Think about it. Where's everybody? So you're just going to leave everybody behind? So Jews are responsible for one another. Many times, great people, righteous people, pay the price for the sins of the Jewish nation. So this is an amazing concept over here. Once again, there is a prophecy for a great event. However, because of sin, because of various sins, then it is delayed. Now, put on another seatbelt, because this is one of these. We're going to hit it.
Is it possible that what you're saying is from the opposite direction? Not that that it's delayed, but that there was a possibility to hasten it, which we failed to.
That's what we said.
No, but there's a difference between if there's a prophecy that it's going to be on a specific date. It can't be delayed.
It could be delayed because it depends when the count is.
Not that it's delayed. It's that there was a possibility that prophecy was not. It's kind of like B'yitach Hishena, that there's a final date which can be hastened, and it could be that their prophecy is talking about the possible. That's
exactly what we said. Exactly what we said. Okay, so folks, put on another seatbelt. Now, we're coming here to understanding the source of our problem. I mean, like, get ready for this, like stand up or something, or make sure that you're ready for it. Stand up, run around, hit yourself a few times to wake up, because here we go. Is the state of Israel a mirror image of the sin of Ephraim. Let's check it out. This is an amazing concept here. So we have a concept here. We have sources that tell us that there was a possibility that the redemption should have come. And Ephraim saw these possibilities. However, because of the fact that the Jewish people, whether it was the Jewish people in Egypt, whether it was the selling of Joseph, there were mistakes, there were sins, there were transgressions, which delayed the redemption. So, here's another possibility of a sin which affected the tribe of Ephraim specifically more than any other tribe. Now listen to this, and this is the connection. This is a connection, transconnection to our present situation in the state of Israel. And here's how it goes. There are dozens of sources. There are verses. There are sources from our sages. There are verses from Psalms. It says it black and white. And I'm just going to go over a few of them. The idea is, I'll just read one and we'll get the idea. I'm going to translate here. This appears in the book Shoham Menachem, page 229. Here we go. 30 years before the redemption in Egypt, the tribe of Ephraim came and they said the following. They talked amongst each other, and here's what they said to each other. If we leave on our own and we do not wait for the redemption from above, if we go on our own, we will be redeemed. If we wait for God, we will not be redeemed. And we do not need the salvation from above. We ourselves are so powerful, are so strong, that we on our own merit and our own strength, we could take on any adversaries on the way. It is all dependent on us. It is all dependent on our strength. And as long as God stays out of it, don't help us. This is what he says. This is a verse in Psalms. Don't help us and don't hurt us. Just stay out. Let it happen on a natural course. Let it roll naturally. This is brought down in dozens and dozens of places. The real sin of the tribe of Ephraim was not that they miscalculated. That wasn't it. The real sin of Ephraim was that they forgot about the salvation comes from God. And they looked at themselves. We have to understand. They had reason to believe in their strength and power. When the Torah talks about them, it uses verses. If it's Psalms 49, 78, chapter 78, look at all the verses. It talks about all their weapons that they had. Every time we see the tribe of Ephraim, it has something to do with military power. And there's nothing wrong with combining total faith and belief in God and going out and fighting. But realize, when push comes to shove, at the end of the day, it's not us and it's not our wisdom. As the prophet Jeremiah told us, Al yitalel chacham bechaf. If you think you're so smart, don't think that your success is because you're smart. And if you think you're so strong and courageous, don't think it's because of your courage or of your strength. No, it's not you. It's all from above. The fact that God made you look to the right or left, or why you did this, or what time did you get up, or which way did you travel, all these 1,000,001 possibilities, and you're giving yourself a big pat on the back. Oh yeah, it's me. That was their downfall. They had, and this is written, the same idea here, in dozens and dozens of books. So, on one hand, we spoke a few minutes ago that they looked at themselves and said, we did not participate in the sin of selling Joseph. We're clean. But they didn't look in the mirror well. Because if they looked in the mirror, not only would they have understood that they also are blemished by what happened with the story of Joseph, but if they would have looked in the mirror and honestly looked, they would have seen that because of their haughtiness, this was their downfall. And listen to this amazing idea. Folks, there's a difference of opinion what the name of the leader of Ephraim, the person that led them out of Egypt, what was his name? So, there's an opinion that his name was Yinon. Yinon is a name of the Messiah. You're right. They had the possibility to be the Messiah and the redemption of the Jewish people. His name was Yinon. It's an amazing thing. The Talmud tells us that the name of the Messiah is Yinon. But there's another opinion. And his name was Yinagon, with a Gimel. And Gimel, the third letter of the alphabet, stands for Ga'ava, haughtiness, pride, exaggerated pride. Amazing thing. What stopped this leader of the tribe of Ephraim from being Yinon, from being the Mashiach? It's that Gimel. It's the Ga'ava. That's why there's two opinions what his name was. It's one opinion. He really had the opportunity to bring the redemption and use his strength in the Jewish way. How did the rabbi tell us that a Jewish fist connected to the Jewish head? It's not enough to have a Jewish fist disconnected from the Jewish head. We have to combine the two. We stand on two legs, so we have on one leg we must make an effort to go out and to defend ourselves and to bring the redemption. On the other hand, we have to realize that the boss and who's in charge is all from the boss. It's all from God. We have to combine the two, because if we just go on one of them, we're in danger. Either way you turn, if you just go on your fist, you're in bad shape. You're in big trouble. If you just go on the above and you don't get off your backside and do something, that's also a disaster area. So you got to combine the two. So this is an amazing thing, that it was possible to bring the redemption. They did not make the mistake of the calculation. What was their mistake? Their mistake was they didn't look in the mirror. They didn't realize that they were the ones. That's why they fell, because they were, in fact, when they left, they said, we don't need any provisions. Why did they go to the Philistines and ask them for provisions? Because they said, we have no problem. No one's going to stand in our way. It's all, we're all coasting over here. It's all downhill. It's all smooth sailing for us. They didn't anticipate any problems. They were so damn sure of their power and of their strength that they didn't even take out the proper provisions to make sure that they were ready. They were not ready, because sometimes you watch a game on the computer or your TV, and you have a great team like the Golden State Warriors, and they'll lose to like a last place team. How do they do that? Because they come into the game, we don't have to practice, we don't have to work hard, we don't have to huff and puff, because we are the Golden State Warriors. We're just going to take out, whoever's here. So many times, they might come to the game and they're not prepared. Why? Because of this haughtiness. Because we're so powerful, we could take on anybody. No one's, there's no competition here. Very dangerous. So that was the fall. Okay, moving right along. Back to our oaths. What were they? Let's go over them quickly. We said 3, 4, or 6. We just say all the 6. Number 1, there was an oath for the Jewish people that they would not be able to, they were not allowed to forcibly break through the wall and enter the land of Israel. Or there's an opinion, what does that mean, to break through the wall? It means they're not able to go up in masses to the land of Israel from outside. Okay? So that's the first. Second oath was Jews were not allowed to rebel against the nations of the world. Second. Third was an oath to the Gentiles. Gentiles were not allowed to oppress the Jewish people over their boundaries. You're allowed to oppress us, but let's not exaggerate. Let's not go over. Okay, let's not go over the border here. Fourth oath. The prophets of Israel should not reveal the secret redemption time to the people. Fifth oath, Israel should not distance the redemption, and according to some language of the Talmud, it says Israel should not hasten the redemption. So we have 2 possibilities. One text says the Jewish people should not delay the redemption, and the exact opposite, the Jewish people should not hasten the redemption. Last but not least, Israel, the people of Israel, are not allowed to reveal various secrets to the nations of the world. We won't get into exactly what those secrets are, because it's supposed to be a secret. Got it? Get it. Okay. So those are the 6 oaths. They are located in the Tractate of Ketubot 111a. And we are told by 2 sources, 2 heavy-hitting sources, that the downfall of Ephraim was because of the fact that they transgressed these oaths, which we thought up until today, we thought that they were something that came into being because during the time of the return of the Jewish people during the Second Temple, or the 70 years of exile after the destruction of the First Temple. All of a sudden we're hit with this whammy here, that these oaths go back to the beginning of time. These go even in the time of Ephraim. So which of these 6 oaths did Ephraim transgress? They transgressed, perhaps, we'll look into all 3 of them, but what looks to our naked eye, that they transgressed the following. Number 1, they transgressed the oath that you are not allowed to go up in mass to the land of Israel, and they went up in mass. There's an opinion that they were 200,000 or 300,000 people. So they went up in mass. Second oath that they transgressed was, you're not allowed to rebel against the nations of the world. What are they doing? Rebelling against leaving Egypt. You're here now. You're not allowed to rebel against the nations. The nations, right now, you're under the auspices of Egypt. You're not allowed to go till you get permission, right? Remember when the Jewish people leave Egypt, Pharaoh says goodbye, you guys could leave now? Hit the road, Jack. Remember that one? Third oath that they transgressed was they tried to hasten the redemption. They left 30 years earlier. They're trying to hasten the redemption. Let's bring it on. Too quick. Okay. So, how do we look? Number 1, you are not allowed to go up in mass. Where is this from? Tractate Ketubot 111a. There is a dispute between Rabbi Zera and his rabbi. His own rabbi was Rabbi Yehuda. No relation. Maybe we are. There was a dispute between the rabbi and his student, Rabbi Zera. They were both rabbis. You know, in Israel, when you go like in certain neighborhoods, every second guy is like a rabbi. So these two, you know, one was the teacher rabbi, and the other one is the student rabbi. So Rabbi Zera goes and he says, "You know what, Rabbi? I want to go to the land of Israel." Thank God, land of Israel. We're in Babylonia now. We can't leave. Don't you remember those oaths? So there's a dispute between Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Yehuda says, it says, one of the oaths, you're not allowed to go, you're not allowed to break through the wall of the land of Israel to get in. You're not allowed to go up to the land of Israel. And Rabbi Zera turns to him and he says, listen, you're correct. You're not allowed to break through, in order to get to the land of Israel, you're not allowed to break through the certain wall that exists around the land of Israel to get in. However, that is talking about the Jewish people going up in mass. And I am little Rabbi Zera. It's just me, my wife, my 15 kids or something. We're just like a small group over here. What you're trying to tell me is that one of the oaths, you're not allowed to go, that you're not allowed to break the wall. That's true. You're not allowed to. He agrees. You're not allowed. Rabbi Zera agrees. You're not allowed to break the wall. But that's only breaking the wall when you go up in mass. And I'm going up just with my own family. Folks, hold on. Hold on. Put on a seatbelt. The same Rabbi Zera, who did go up to the land of Israel, even though his rabbi told him not to go. The same Rabbi Zera, who agreed to the premise that you're not allowed to go up to the land of Israel en masse. Listen to this. Amazing. In Shir HaShirim Rabbah 8:10, there's the story, following story, that Rabbi Zera was in the marketplace in the land of Israel, and he went to buy something, and he's speaking to the merchant who's working there. He tells him, make sure, you know, we're Jews, you have to make sure that you weigh everything you have to be scrupulous when you weigh, food, products, spices, whatever it is. You have to be very scrupulous, so we don't transgress any prohibitions in the Torah. He says, sure, no problem. But the merchant, all of a sudden, he just lashes out. He says, what are you telling? You're giving me some ethical, talk over here to be meticulous here with the weights. Look, who are you? You know who you guys are? He looked at it. He said, who am I? Who am I? You guys. He's pointing to Rabbi Zera, who had come from Babylonia. He's now a resident of Israel. He lives here. He got his little blue identity card maybe in his pocket. He says, you guys, the merchant, is screaming at him, oh, you're coming to me with some ethical, speech? I'll come to you with some ethical words here. And he tells him, listen, buddy, you guys caused the destruction of the second temple. Because if you would have come in mass up to the land of Israel during the times that it was possible, there were different possibilities for the Jewish people in the time, starting from the king of Cyprus, Koresh, when he said, whoever wants to go up to the land of Israel can go up. And later on in the time of Ezra and Nehemiah, there were many times opportunities. And the Jewish people as a whole didn't do it. And because of the fact that the masses stayed on their, it rhymes with the masses stayed in Babylonia there. So therefore, the second temple was destroyed. And therefore, the second temple was not on the level of the first temple. There were 5 things that were missing. There were 5 special vessels that were missing. And according to many opinion, there was a possibility that if the Jewish people would have returned in mass, there would have been no second, the temple would not have been destroyed, and also there would have not been another exile. So that's heavy responsibility on your shoulders. That's what he tells them. And he says, what's the difference between me and you? Rabbi Zera shoots back. Oh, it's only us Babylonians? We're responsible for the exile and not you? He says, yeah. He says, it's you guys that are responsible. Rabbi Zera, amazing story. He goes from this, he's really bothered. He says, like, if this guy, there's some reason why I had to hear this message. And the next place after he gets out of the marketplace, he goes into a yeshiva, into a Jewish study hall, and he hears the rabbi giving a talk. And the rabbi says the same idea, that if the Jewish people would have gone up to Israel in mass, then the second temple would still be standing and we would have been redeemed. And he hears this lesson and he says, Rabbi Zera, he says, wow, this simple merchant? He taught me one hell of a lesson. Folks, do we understand here? In years before this, Rabbi Zera is agreeing that you're not allowed to go in mass, but I'm allowed to go because I'm only a family man. But now, some years pass, and he's able to look back. He's able to look at history and see what happened. And now he changes his opinion, and he says, this is correct, that the Jewish people should have come up in mass. Amazing. So that's the problem. The first oath, we've solved the problem. That's not a problem. Even Rabbi Zera, he understood that the problem was that they didn't come back in mass. Second oath, which is problematic. Second one is that they hastened the redemption. They hastened the redemption. However, number one, first idea here, there is a dispute amongst our sages. What is the correct text? According to most opinion, for example, the Munkatcher Rav, the Yavetz, the Ir Binyamin, they all, and many, many more, say that the true text of the Talmud is that a person should not delay the exile. So this was definitely not the problem of Ephraim. They didn't delay the exile. They themselves, they made a mistake. They went out and they were punished. We had various reasons why they were punished over the last 3 classes. Okay, but according to this text, that they delayed. This is not so. They didn't delay the exile. The exile was delayed because of various calculations, other types of calculations, whether it is they had to wait for the birth of Isaac or other calculations. However, even if we want to, according to Rabbi Moshe Charlap, he says an amazing idea. Listen to his idea. He says, up until a few hundred years ago, he says both texts are correct. Both are correct. Before a couple hundred years ago, the correct text was that the Jewish people should not try to hasten the redemption. That was the reality. However, in the last few hundred years, since the times of the Gra, or the times of the Baal Shem Tov, 250 years ago, when the Jewish people began to return to the land of Israel, here the correct text, for the last hundreds of years, the correct text is do not delay. Do not delay the redemption. That is the correct. So it's an amazing idea here by Rabbi Moshe Charlap, that both texts are correct. It depends what time in history we're talking about. If we're talking about 300 years ago, then the correct text is don't hasten. But in the last 250 years or so, the idea is don't delay. Don't you cause a delay in the redemption. So an amazing idea. We can also say the following, that the text really is that one should not delay the exile. But what happened? Because of the sins, because of the transgressions of the tribe of Ephraim themselves, as we said, either one, that they were also responsible for the sin of the selling of Joseph, because Joseph was also responsible for upsetting his brothers. He was incorrect. Or we said the fact is that they looked at themselves at these superpowers. They don't want God. They don't need his help. We are almighty. We could take on anybody. That was they, by their sin, we could explain it as they delayed, they transgressed this oath which says don't delay the exile. By your actions you could have brought the redemption, tribe of Ephraim. As we said, the leader of Ephraim, his name was the name of the Messiah. He could have brought the redemption. So what delayed? You delayed it. You were over this oath of delaying, delaying. Or we could look at it another way, that they could have hastened. They could have hastened it, and because of their bad traits, they didn't hasten. They could have hastened it. They could have brought the redemption, but because of their bad traits, they did not hasten. So either way you look at it, both of them are definitely correct. The last but not least is the third oath. Third oath is you're not allowed to rebel against the nations. You're not allowed to rebel against the nations. So this is very interesting. Why? Because there is in the code of Jewish law, in Yoredea 236:6, it says the following Jewish law. If there are two people that swore to one another, they had some deal, and then one of the two people, they retreat, they go back on their part of the bargain, does that mean that my oath I'm still in this game because I gave an oath? Once again, we're not talking about I promise. We're talking about a real, Jewish oath where invoking God's name. This is a very serious matter here. So this halacha, this law tells us something very interesting. That if you have two people and they had a deal, they had an agreement, and one of them backs out of the agreement, that frees me from my part of the bargain. That frees me without having to go to a Jewish court and annulling my oath. I don't even have to do that. Once the second party, when they revoked, when they did not keep their bargain, I am exempt, and I don't have to even annul my oath. Amazing thing. So, folks, this concept is on this page of the Code of Jewish Law. The commentator, the Jewish law commentator called the Shach, he says an amazing thing, and this is brought down in Tractate Sota also. It says the following, that we know that there was an agreement between Abraham and the Philistine people. So that's very interesting. If there was an agreement that they're not allowed to fight amongst one another, they're not allowed to bother each other, how was it that big old Samson, how does he go and destroy the Philistine people? Not once and not twice. He keeps on going after them. When we open up the prophets, we see many battles between the Jewish people and the Philistines, but there was an agreement. So the Talmud and the Shach brings it down. The commentator of the Shach brings it down. Amazing concept. Very simple. This is brought down dozens of times in the Torah, where there was an agreement between the Jewish people and the nation, and the nations skipped out on their part of the bargain, their part of the promise. Therefore, this frees us from our oath, from our promise also. So therefore, Samson was 100% in the right when he went to attack, because of the fact that the Philistines kept on attacking us, and there was an agreement that they are not allowed to bother us. So just the same is with the oaths. One of the oaths was for the nations. They were not allowed to enslave us and to oppress us over, like exaggerate on their oppression against us. We have to be under their auspices. We don't rule ourselves, but that's about it. What they did to us, to put us through throwing 10,000 babies and killing 10,000 little babies into the Nile River with the crocodiles. That is not considered to be an oppression that God intended. So therefore, once the nations of the world, Egypt in our case, once that they went and they retreated on their part of the bargain, which was not to oppress the Jewish people beyond a certain level, when they regressed, therefore there was no responsibility for the tribe of Ephraim to keep their part and not rebel against the Egyptians and leave. So,
Rabbi, did they actually swear the Egyptians, or later on the Romans, or is it just a gzera on them that takes the form of the oath?
That's a great question, and we will get to this point, but I'll just say one thing to answer it. But then we will get heavy into it. The idea is, folks, there was never really a ceremony. Please have your seats here. Okay, now for the Jewish people, here are your oaths. And say amen. And now we turn to the nations of the world. I'm glad that everybody came today. It's great to see all the nations here. And here's your oath, baby. No. The idea is that God created a certain nature, a certain understanding in all human beings, where if it was the Jewish people, they had in their DNA, they had in their nature certain limitations. These limitations were they were created by God. When we talk about oaths, that's what we're talking about. God created a situation in the hearts and the makeup and the nature of the Jewish people that they did not want to rebel. Amazing thing. Think about it. Jews are slaves, and for all those years, no Jew tries to slip out the back jack. Why is that? Because they had in their nature that God had placed in them that we're not going anywhere. Till it's the right time, we're not leaving. They had this makeup in them. And the same thing with the nations of the world. They had an intuition. They had an understanding, a nature in them that the Jewish people would be under their auspices, however, not to go overboard here with the oppression against the Jewish people. So everybody knew what to do. So this idea is also brought down in the book of Zerah Shimshon. And this brings us to Purim, which is right around the corner. An amazing thing. Who the hell gave the Jewish people in the time of Purim permission to go out and kill tens of thousands of Gentiles? Isn't one of the oaths that you're not allowed to rebel against the nations of the world? I don't give a damn if you received permission by the king of Ahasuerus. Who gave you permission? Ahasuerus is not he's not a rabbi. God says, do not rebel against the nations. We are under the auspices of the Persian people in Persia, okay? They wanted to kill us. Let us annul that decree and we'll go home and we'll end it like that. Who in the world gave the Jewish people permission to rebel against the nations of the world? They should have told Ahasuerus, man, we don't want We're not going for your offer, baby. Your offer is against our Torah. It goes against the Torah. We just want this decree to destroy the Jewish people, men, women, children. We want it to be finished. Finito la commedia. We want it to be annulled. That's it. Leave us alone. No, they go out. 75,000 people later. Man, they just blew them away. Another one bites the dust. Yeah. What's the idea? So the Zera Ephraim, the Zera Shimshon, he says an amazing concept. Very simple. According to what we said, you're not allowed to rebel against nations. However, if the nations of the world turn up the fire too much against the Jewish people, we're off the hook. And when you decree against the Jewish people not to oppress us, not to look at us funny, not to give us stars to wear, Jewish stars or some kind of Jewish symbol, when you go and you say that we are going to destroy you, well, you're way off the scale here. You've gone way overboard. And therefore, we have no oath not to blow you away. And that's why there were many, many Persians in that Purim story that are no longer here. They just bit the dust. So, anyways, we see that different ways to look at the three oaths possible that the tribe of Ephraim may have transgressed. We saw from all of them that basically the only thing that we could really say is the fact that they had various characteristic traits that were very faulty, and this idea of me and our strength, and we're the superpowers, and we could take anybody on. We don't have to bring provisions. We could take anybody on. It's all us. Kochi ve'otzem yadi, which is an amazing thing. Folks, if you think about it, fast forwarded to the time of Bar Kokhba. You know what messed up Bar Kokhba? Bar Kokhba should have been the Messiah. Rabbi Akiva was not wrong. He was the Messiah. So where did he mess up? You know where he messed up? When he comes to God and said, just leave us alone. We don't need you, God. Just stay out of it. Don't help us and don't hinder us. Just leave us alone. He fell. That's where he fell. Look at the state of Israel. The state of Israel. Go back. We have 1 or 2 classes on the Independence Day. What is the true test for the state of Israel? You know what the true test of the state of Israel is? To have the best army and to give all the credit to God. To say it's not us. That is the test of the state of Israel. Are we going to say it's our technology, it's our high-tech, it's our low-tech, it's our no-tech, it's our army, it's all the IDF, and unfortunately, the state of Israel, are we a repeat? Unfortunately, many situations, we are a repeat of the sin of Ephraim. The sin of Ephraim was not that they miscalculated. The calculations were correct. However, when they looked in the mirror at the end of the day, that was their mistake. They didn't see that they made transgressions, that God would not redeem them because of the fact that they did not look to God for redemption. So that was missing. And that is the test, that is the real test of the state of Israel. Will we connect all our successes to God? Will we give God the credit? Or do we give our politicians or our military people, they received the credit? That is the test.